Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming. My name is Emma Rose, and today I'll be talking to you about my honor thesis, which looked at reading motivation in adolescents with hearing loss and typical hearing.
So what is reading motivation? To put it really simply, reading motivation is what motivates someone to read. And there are a lot of different aspects and components that make up one's overall reading motivation, such as intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, social reasons for reading, and then self-efficacy. And why do we care about reading motivation? Well, previous studies have found that schools that encourage reading motivation in their students have these students score better on standardized assessments in reading comprehension, other reading skills than schools that don't. So this really seems to show that there could potentially be a link between reading motivation and reading skills. And this is important to keep in mind because children who are hard of hearing have generally shown poorer outcomes in reading compared to children with normal hearing. So we kind of want to dive deeper into this. So this brings us to our next question, which is how do you measure reading motivation? So in 1995, Wegfeld et al. Designed the Motivation for Reading Questionnaire, henceforth I will just be calling it the MRQ, and it's a self-assessment tool that assesses all these different aspects of reading, and previously it has been used to measure reading motivation in typically hearing children and adolescents. Traditionally, the MRQ is administered in a very pen and paper format, which is fine, but it's also not necessarily the most efficient and effective way to collect data. So this really brought us to our first research question, which we were wondering if we could take the MRQ and put it into an online format, and then if we could administer it like that and still get similar results from a more traditional administration method. And we want to do this because reading motivation in adolescents with hearing loss is really just something that's not looked at. And we thought if we could transfer the MRQ and it gave us reliable results, we could open up this field of research a little more. So when looking at this, we wanted to see if there would be an effect of gender and grade level in reading motivation profiles, as well if there would be an effect of hearing loss in reading motivation profiles. To collect our data, we sent a UIOM mass email blast out and referred to a research registry of children with hearing loss. All the participants took the MRQ, which was transitioned into an online format using REDCap. Looking at the MRQ itself, it is assessed on a 4-step Likert scale. The participants are given a prompt and then they have 4 options. 1 would it equal very different from me and 4 a lot like me. In general, higher reading motivation scores will correlate with a higher score on the Likert scale. In total, we had 39 responses, but we were only able to examine 29 of those because quite a few people started the survey but didn't finish it, and we did have someone outside of our age range take the survey. Looking at the participants we examined, we looked through grades 5 through 10, and this is because we're looking at the 11 through 15 age range, because at this age, children have progressed from learning how to read and are now reading to learn. And these adolescents are just going to have a very different relationship with reading than those who are still learning how to read. So that's why we really tried to narrow that age range down. We definitely had more females than males take the survey, but we did have a fairly even split between hearing loss and typically hearing, though we had only 3 older students with hearing loss take the survey. I'll quickly walk you through this graph right here for our results. On the x-axis, we divided this up between younger and older students, and on the y-axis, we have the raw total score of the MRQ. Looking at age, we saw that there is actually a significant effect of grade on reading motivation profiles. Younger students showed higher motivation for reading than older students. So in summary, there are no significant effects on reading motivation as a function of gender and hearing loss. However, when examining grade level, we found that younger children had higher levels of reading motivation compared to older children. And this is really good news because this meant that our results were comparable to previous findings when we were looking at grade effects, even with a much smaller sample size and a different form of administration. So looking in the future, the MRQ should be able to be utilized in this online format to conduct more research on reading motivation in children with hearing loss. And to wrap this all up, I just want to give a huge thank you to iCrew, as well as the Department of Communication Science and Disorders for providing me funding, as well as the Pediatric Audiology Lab, who supported me so much, and another shout out to my mentor, Beth Walker, who I really couldn't have done any of this without her. I have my email in the lower right-hand corner, so if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'd be happy to answer.